Hello everyone, welcome to this year's World Pangolin Day. I am Babajide Agbola, a conservation ecologist, a vet doctor by training, and born in Nazareth with a vow to give a voice to the voiceless of God's creation. I'm the CEO, Agbo Veterinary and Environmental Consult, a park, biodiversity and ecotourism management consultancy firm. At present, the project coordinator for Ekiti Biodiversity Survey. Now, enough of me. Let's go to the star of the day, which is pangolin. Now, pangolin, which are primary nocturnal mammals, also referred to as scaly anteaters. They are unique for their feature of scale cover, making them the only mammal with scales. Now, there are 8 different species of pangolin. 4 of these species are found in Africa, while the other 4 are found in Asia. We are so fortunate in West Africa that 3 of the 4 species are found here. We have the white-bellied pangolin, the long-tailed pangolin, and the giant pangolin. The 3rd species found in Africa, the Temminckii pangolin, is found in North, East, and Southern Africa. Now, all pangolin species are listed on Appendix I of Convention for International Trade in Endangered Species, CITES. And while all 4 species are listed in Class B of the 1968 African Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. Now, to know more about the unique features of the pangolin, you can look out for the poster, which is shown here, which reels out the amazing facts about pangolin and then their conservation status. Now, if you look at under the photographs, it says they cannot protect themselves, but together we can. That's one thing I want every one of us to hold there as this presentation goes on. It's not a one-man show. We all have to come together to save this amazing animal from going extinct. Now, the challenges facing conservation in Nigeria can be expressed in the area of state of wildlife management. The major threats to wildlife in Nigeria are loss of habitat, overhunting, and poaching. Wildlife habitat is being destroyed by logging, farming, exploitation for fuel wood, illegal grazing inside wildlife reserve, industrial plantation of exotic trees, housing, and highway development. Now, it is known that at present, the level of deforestation puts Nigeria at a forest cover of less than 5%, while the international standard is 25%. Now, the challenges: we have obsolete conservation laws, poor enforcement, inadequate interagency cooperation. Now, when I talk about obsolete conservation laws, I am not talking about the Nesria law, which is up to standard as at now. But the thing about this law is that it only applies to international trade. So what happens to the person on the street selling pangolin, or the young boy who is sent by some adults to go look for pangolin in the forest for whatever reasons they want to use it for? These are situations that have to be addressed, because only state laws apply to such transactions. The Nesria law has to be adopted by different states of the Federation to make the enforcement easier for the law enforcement agencies, most especially the agencies saddled with the protection of our wildlife, which is Nesria. Now, we are having inadequate interagency cooperation, in that the nursery officials are not allowed at port of entry, which is where, or an exit, which is where these animals are transited through when they are being trafficked. You have customs and some other agencies who are there, immigration, and a lot of them, until recently, are not trained to tackle illegal wildlife trafficking. Although some agencies are now trying to, some international donor agencies are now trying to help us upgrade the interagency cooperation and have a situation where we will be able to nip the problem in the bud. Now, we have disconnection from traditional norms and values. This is one of the problems that we are facing in Nigeria with regards to wildlife. In the past, only selected people were able to go into forests to hunt, which were in the Yoruba area, the hunters, the Odes. If you are not from the hunting family, you don't just go into the forest to hunt, but you are allowed to hunt grass cutters and rats and rodents around your farmland. But in the case of really going into the forest, into the jungle to hunt, it was only designated for a particular family. So a situation where we find ourselves now is anybody just carries a gun, carries a cutlass, goes into the forest and starts hunting. So we have to revisit our norms and values, and this will definitely be a plus for conservation issues. While speaking to one of the hunters a while back, he mentioned that only specific people were even allowed to handle pangolins, not just anybody. But nowadays, you see anybody go into the forest, carry a pangolin, come out, because the norms are being disregarded. We have the situation we are in now. Now, we have poorly managed protected areas. Now, when you're talking of protected areas, you're not talking of only the national parks. You have Ramsar sites, you have nature reserves, you have forest reserves. Apparently in Nigeria, the nature park, forest reserves, and wildlife reserves are managed by states, and some of them apparently don't have qualified personnel to handle these places. In situations where they have the qualified personnel, they are very good at desk work. So to really curb this, the management of such places should be handed over to civil society groups, which are coming up now and have strong interests. A lot of them have capacity to handle some of these places. Take, for example, we have a situation in Ekiti State where a group is handling one of the forests, the East Forest, part of it, which is a sanctuary for chimpanzees. And they are doing a good job there. And you have other areas like the forest reserve, a forest reserve in Bayelsa State, being managed by a civil society. So NGOs are coming up and they have capacity to handle the conservation and the management of these areas. This is one area that government should think of and hand over such places, and let the civil servants deal with policy making and addressing definitely the issue of protection and the issue of making resources available to some of these civil society groups. Now, inadequate qualified manpower to manage conservation issues at the grassroots, I've said that is in the case of civil service setup. So with NGOs, there are young conservationists coming up that are very, very vibrant and ready to address some of the issues that are on ground. Absence of source of livelihood, belief-based use of pangolin and pangolin parts, absence of conservation education in our education curriculum. Now, the belief system in our society has a lot to do with how we handle pangolin conservation, because unless people are really convinced that what they believe the pangolin scale can do is just a myth, the persecution of pangolins will continue. The pangolin scale is just keratin. It's like telling somebody that if you eat your fingernails, it will cure maybe glaucoma or cure impotence. So this belief system has to be addressed to help in the conservation of pangolin in Nigeria. Now, the way forward: introduction of conservation education into Nigerian school curriculum, manpower development and capacity building. It is said that a good basic education is as essential to people's needs as clean air and water, for without it, individuals are robbed of their ability to make sound choice for their future prosperity. Now, if we address education, we will have people growing up to want to be conservationists, and being conscious of the environment will make a lot of difference. I look forward to a day when I visit a village and a child will see a bird, and instead of going for a stone to throw at the bird, he will rush inside, bring out a sketch pad. Oh, this is a beautiful bird. Let me sketch what it looks like. With that, we will definitely have gone a long way in conservation. Now, education is the key to promoting a proper care and respect for our environment. The future of our environment lies in the hands of the next generation. An old saying goes, we do not own any land. We are merely looking after it for our children. By making future generations aware of the pressure on the natural world, we can help to decrease the destruction that our generation is only just realizing. Now, promoting research into wildlife conservation. This is very important in that very little until recently was known about pangolin. As at now, work is being done by a couple of PhD students to determine the range and the feeding habits of the pangolin so as to replicate it when they are being rescued and kept in captivity. For example, the giant pangolin, very little is known about how its ecology, yes. Very little is still known about its range, because you see some publications about giant pangolin, they will tell you that you don't have them in Nigeria, whereas there is proof of the giant pangolin in Omo forests and Okomu National Park, as well as Gashaka-Gumti. So, but these proofs were only gathered from hunters, not from conservationists. So more research has to be done to determine their range, to determine their population, as well as other important factors that will definitely help the protection, conservation of pangolin in Nigeria. Now, provision of alternative sources of livelihood. It is said that one of the biggest problems to the environment is poverty, because the struggle for survival often forces the poor to destroy the resources they will need in the future. So we have grass cutter farming, we have beekeeping and honey processing. These are other sources of livelihood that can be introduced to people in the grassroots to dissuade them from hunting or illegal poaching. Because yes, they will justify themselves that, look, we are selling this pangolin for livelihood. But in situations where you've provided other sources of livelihood for them, they don't have any justification for such. Now, this chart here shows the interrelationship between wildlife, economic development, and environmental protection. It shows that everything is related, and if one is not set straight, it affects the other. If you have economic development on the downturn, it will affect the wildlife, and it will affect environmental protection. And if you have wildlife on the downturn, it affects economic development, and you see the effect on environmental protection as well. Because there are things that wildlife provide, that's ecological services, that you need them for proper economic development. The bees help in pollination, the trees help watershed. So these things have to be put into consideration while making policies. Now, growth is fundamentally a process of investing in various forms by society, and the rate and quality of growth depends on the size and composition of such investment. Economic output is sustained and enhanced over time through the maintenance and enhancement of various environmental services flow, and through the effective protection and management of natural resources stock, as well as through the augmentation of natural resources, extraction, and final production capacity. Therefore, investment in the maintenance of natural capital services is one of the important pathways for achieving sustainable development. Now, in situations where you have a free-for-all of all these resources, then nobody will want to invest. And when these investments don't come in, we destroy what we have. Now you see people marketing wildlife because they are looking for sources of livelihood. So, protection has to come in form of enforcement, that's the carrot and stick method, and alternative sources of livelihood. Now, promotion of community participation in conservation, updating the enforcement conservation, and updating and enforcement of conservation laws, setting up functional wildlife rescue and rehabilitation centers across the country, introduction of well-managed protected areas will incorporate local conservation knowledge and modern ICT, which will incorporate local conservation knowledge and modern ICT techniques. Now, I think I've mentioned this, but the situation of Wildlife Rescue Center is very, very important to wildlife protection in Nigeria, because it's a situation where animals are confiscated and nowhere to rehabilitate them prior to release. Then there's no point in going to rescue them, because they will at the end of the day still die. So functional wildlife rescues should be encouraged, and I will come out here to say that such centers should be championed by civil society, because the commitments to these things are there. What government should do is to put together enabling laws controlling how these rescue centers will be managed. Take, for example, a situation where you have a rescue center that handles both wildlife and domestic animals is frowned at, or a rescue center that is too small, that you have overlapping of cages and animals just not being controlled and they mix up. Such a thing should have a regulatory body that is in charge, so that we don't have a free-for-all, as mentioned earlier on. Now, CITES. Pangolin Conservation Working Group was set up in 2016 with the aim of creating awareness about the conservation status of pangolin, how best to protect the pangolin population in Nigeria, as well as mentor young up-and-coming conservationists in the country. And so far, the group had the first World Pangolin Day in 2016, where a lecture was given, Pangolin Lost, Billion of Opportunity Lost. The uplink is there on YouTube. Organizing the first Pangolin Rescue Rehabilitation Tag and Release on the 20th of March 2016 in collaboration with the Forest Unit of the RITA. And they collaborated with Tiki Haywood Foundation in Zimbabwe to produce educational flyers to create awareness about the conservation status of pangolin in Nigeria. In September of 2016, they had a hike from Ibadan to Erinjesha waterfall to create awareness about the pangolin status, talking to market women, hunters, and talking to traditional rulers about the conservation status of the pangolin and the need to protect this precious and wonderful animal. Research in 2017 was also done to determine the tick infestation and blood parasite of pangolin in Omo Forest, which was published in the Journal of Biodiversity and Endangered Species. The link is there. The Ekiti Biodiversity Survey Project also has a little contribution. It had the first grassroots World Pangolin Day in Ekiti, which was hosted by the traditional ruler, and it went ahead to produce a poster which was distributed among the traditional institutions as well as school children to create awareness about the pangolin, the status of the pangolin. The Ekiti Biodiversity Service Project also did a preliminary biodiversity survey of selected sacred groves and forests in Ekiti. During the project, they visited 21 towns, 28 areas. A report was submitted to the Ekiti State Government through the Ekiti Forestry Commission, recommending 10 sites to be designated as community protected forests. Now, these 10 sites, the total land area is about 800 hectares. So, at present, this has been further added to the protected areas in Nigeria. To save pangolin, leadership and political will is key to setting the stage for engaging in the implementation of environmental protection, which will enhance economic development. This will need to be accomplished by strong institutions, governance, and capacity to deliver. Underpinning this will require partnership across all levels of government in the country, region, and internationally. New ways of doing business, mindset change will be needed to add the scale of the challenges, to address the scale of the challenges, many of which go beyond borders of the country. Now, in conclusion, man cannot divorce himself from nature. Hence, when man is fully aware and appreciates things around him, most especially his environment, the tendency for continuity is high for both man and other living things. Looking at society, nature, and life in a spectrum, one will discover that survival of man actually depends on a cordial interrelationship between him and his environment. That is, having an understanding of situations of things around him, the trees, stone, sound, and sand. The ideal or perfect world in harmony reveals a state of cordial, perfect, peaceful coexistence between man and his environment. Now, here is a poem that I usually like reciting, and it is a poem telling us about how best we should treat our surroundings. It goes thus: in the days of old, when man was at peace with nature, When he only took what he needed, not what he wanted. Man had the shade to rest after a hard day's work. His wife had enough wood to cook with, and there were enough herbs to heal the sick, making them healthy and strong. Today, man has gone greedy. We cut down trees with our chainsaws, brought down bushes for no reason, and kill all the wildlife for bushmeat. Now, our environment is ill, and man is sick. There are no more trees to serve as shade, no more herbs to heal the sick. Let us all come together and live in harmony with nature. Let us go back to the days of old, when man took only what he needed, not what he wanted. Let us plant back our trees, stop burning our bushes, stop hunting our wild animals for bushmeat. Let us all protect and appreciate our environment to show generations yet unborn the beauty of our world. So, they cannot protect themselves, but together we can. Thank you for listening. If you have any comments, put them in the comment box, and questions, I'll gladly get back to you. Thank you very much.